I got home from a 12-hour ER shift and found Karen, floating in my pool, throwing a luau, like she owned the place. HOA Karen used my pool for her party, so I filled it with dish soap and turned on the jets. Part 1, the flamingo, the floaties, and the final straw I had just pulled into the driveway. Scrubs still clinging to me from a 12-hour ER shift, eyes burning, brain foggy. All I wanted was a glass of iced tea, a shower, and silence. But instead, there it was. A 6-foot-tall ice swan melting beside my lawn gnome, balloon arches strung across my fence, folding tables covered in shrimp cocktail and someone's homemade guac, and my pool swarmed. Dozens of strangers, kids doing cannonballs, adults sipping from coconuts, loud music shaking the ground like a mini earthquake. I blinked. Once. Twice. This wasn't a backyard BBQ. This was a full-on luau. In my backyard, that I'd left locked 6 hours ago. And then I saw her, Karen, floating in the center of it all, lounging on a giant pink flamingo, sun hat tilted just so, oversized sunglasses hiding what I assumed was a smug grin. She raised a margarita in one hand, Bluetooth speaker in the other, and gave me the laziest wave I'd ever seen. "Hey!" she called out. "Don't worry, we'll be done before sunset. It's for the HOA, you know. You're part of the community, right?" My jaw tightened. She had no idea how close she was to getting dunked right there and then. But I didn't yell, didn't scream. I just stepped forward, onto the deck I cleaned every week, past a woman in heels holding a mimosa who whispered, "Isn't this such a gorgeous venue?" The nerve. It burned hotter than the sun. I turned to Karen, still lounging like she ran a Roman bathhouse, and asked calmly, "You broke into my house?" She laughed, like I'd told a joke over brunch. "Oh, no, no, no," she said, twirling her drink. "We used the side gate. You weren't here, and the bylaws say we can use shared amenities for community events." I stared at her. My pool is not a shared amenity. She kicked her legs lazily in the water. "Well, you don't attend meetings, so you probably missed the vote. We passed it last quarter. Pool spaces can be petitioned for HOA functions. You should really check your email." Beat. A man in cargo shorts wandered up and handed me a paper plate stacked with sliders. "You gotta try these, bro. This place is sick. Who lives here?" I looked him dead in the eye. "I do." He froze, blinked, then backed away into the crowd like he'd just seen a ghost. Karen, still floating, still smug. "You signed the HOA agreement when you moved in," she said with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "You're bound by the rules. Maybe it's time you read them." Then she turned away and shouted across the yard, "Can we get more guac over here? The chips are lonely." That's when I walked back inside. Not because I gave up, but because if I stayed out there 1 second longer, I'd say something I couldn't take back. And what I really wanted was revenge. The kind you feel deep in your bones. The kind that doesn't shout. It foams. Part 2. The closet, the claws, and the perfect loophole. I didn't even take off my shoes. I walked straight past the chaos. Outside. Past the kitchen, and into the hall closet I hadn't opened in years. Inside, buried under a tangle of extension cords, expired light bulbs, and one extremely judgmental smoke detector, I found the box. The box every homeowner has, but never wants to touch. Deeds, blueprints, old utility permits, bylaw pamphlets from the Stone Age. I dumped it on the floor and started digging like my sanity depended on it. And then, buried at the bottom, under a yellowing envelope and an old inspection tag, I found it. The smoking gun. Beat. My pool, the one I'd paid to heat through winter, the one I vacuumed every week, wasn't even technically on the same lot as the house. It had been added later, by the original owner, before the HOA even existed. The parcel ID? Different. That meant one thing: legally. My pool was not subject to HOA jurisdiction. It was its own separate parcel. A loophole so glorious. I actually laughed out loud. Karen had no authority, no vote, no email, no meeting minutes could override a land record filed with the county. She had trespassed, not just morally, and the best part? She didn't know I knew. Beat. I stood by the fridge, gripping the document like a golden ticket. Outside, someone was sipping my juice. My juice! Karen had raided my fridge like it was a hotel minibar. I could see her floating still, barking orders, treating my home like her clubhouse, and just like that, the rage in me turned cold. Because now, I didn't just have anger, I had leverage. I opened my laptop, started researching property code violations, trespassing statutes, unauthorized use of private land. I even called a friend who worked at the clerk's office and asked her to pull zoning maps and HOA boundary lines. And then, I got creative. Beat. I didn't want a simple get out. I wanted a spectacle. Because if Karen was going to act like this was her resort, I was going to show her what happened when a resort malfunctioned. Part 3. The Jets, the Jugs, and the perfect plan. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was angry, but because I was planning. By sunrise, I'd mapped out every inch of my pump system, sketched it, measured it, tested it, twice. Because the jets in my pool, they weren't just strong. They were industrial-grade strong. Strong enough to clear leaves, sand, even squirrels that occasionally mistook the surface for solid ground. And with just the right kind of additive, they could turn my pool into a symphony of chaos. So I made a call. Not to the cops, to a high school buddy who ran pest control for commercial kitchens. "Can you get me 3 gallons of industrial-grade dish soap?" I asked. There was a long pause. "Are you starting a car wash?" "Sort of." He dropped it off that evening. 3 thick, heavy-duty jugs, the kind used to degrease diner floors and factory sinks. I tested a tiny bit in a 5-gallon bucket with the jets on low. And when that thick foam started rising like a whipped cream volcano, I knew I had found my masterpiece. But soap alone wasn't enough, so I installed a hidden feed pipe tucked beneath the landscaping near the filter box, leading directly into the auxiliary intake. I rigged a release valve, then synced the entire system to my phone. 1 tap, and the jets would pull in that glorious detergent cocktail right as they reached full power. Now all I needed was the right moment. And just like that, the universe delivered. Saturday morning, a bright pink flyer tucked under my windshield. HOA Luau Night, 7 p.m., food, funds, and pool time. And there it was, my address, printed, bold, underlined, as if Karen had declared war by invitation. I smiled. She had no idea what she'd just stepped into, no idea the amenity she thought belonged to the community was about to become her worst, bubbly nightmare. Part 4. The sarong, the setup, and the storm brewing Saturday arrived. Hot, sticky, the kind of air that makes your shirt cling to you like a second skin. Perfect weather for a luau, or a reckoning. I spent the morning tidying the yard, not for guests, but for optics. I trimmed the hedges, swept the patio, realigned every chair to look like it belonged in a magazine shoot. To the neighbors walking by, I looked like the gracious host. Inside, 3 gallons of liquid justice sat hidden behind the pump house, shaded, waiting. The rig was flawless. I'd tested it twice during the week with just water. The timing, the pressure, the pull from the auxiliary line. Perfect. One twist of a valve, one button on my phone, and the jets would drag every drop of that detergent through the system like a pipeline of karma. At 12:04 p.m., I spotted her, Karen, marching down the street in a blinding blue sarong, glittery headpiece swaying like she'd just won a parade. She was dragging 2 coolers behind her and barking into her phone about the food truck's ETA. I ducked behind the blinds. She was already sweating, but grinning. That same smug grin I'd seen at the last community gathering. The grin of a woman who thought the world would bend to her clipboard. At 2 p.m., the van arrived. Folding tables, tiki torches, paper lanterns, boxes of plastic leis, all of it marched straight through my side gate. Not a knock, not a call. Karen stood by the deck, waving the rental crew in like a cruise ship director welcoming passengers. I recorded every second. My phone in one hand, camera on the windowsill, outdoor cams catching multiple angles. I wasn't just planning revenge, I was building an archive. At 4:30, the guests started arriving. Hawaiian shirts, oversized sunglasses, more flower crowns than a middle school TikTok dance. Some were neighbors, some I didn't recognize. Most, the same people who sat in HOA meetings in silence while Karen bulldozed anything that smelled like dissent. And now they were in my yard, sipping piña coladas like it was their reward for compliance. By 5:30, the party was thumping. A limbo contest had broken out, using my pool skimmer pole. Karen stood at the deep end, wireless mic in hand, declaring that this would become an annual HOA tradition. She said it with such pride, as if none of it was stolen, as if the trust of the neighborhood justified the trespass. 10 minutes before 6, I stepped outside. 2 folding chairs under one arm, cooler in the other, flip-flops silent on the patio stone. The music dipped. Conversations paused. I could feel the stares. Karen looked up from her drink, confused at first, then annoyed. She tried waving me away like an off-leash dog, but I smiled, set down my chair, and cracked open a soda. No words, just presence. And that was enough. Part 5. The button, the bubbles, and the breakdown. Karen sauntered over, sandals squelching on the damp grass, the scent of sunscreen and overconfidence trailing behind her. "Oh, I didn't think you were going to be here," she cooed, fake concern, sugar-dipped voice. "I thought you said you were working tonight." I took a slow sip from my soda, glanced at the crowd swaying to the beat. "I figured I'd drop by. Looks like you've got everything under control." She nodded, smug and satisfied. "You know, I really admire you for finally embracing the spirit of the community. It's about unity, you know." I nodded. "Oh, absolutely. It's nice seeing people enjoy themselves." And with that, she turned her back, like she'd won. Like I was just another neighbor who'd fallen in line. She had no idea that in 60 seconds, her reign was about to meet the foam. I pulled out my phone, discreetly, opened the pool control app, tapped the button labeled Jets Full. The pump hummed to life. Water began to stir. Swirls, little trails of bubbles forming like the prelude to a storm. Someone yelled, "Hey, party mode!" Laughter erupted. The jets kicked into full pressure, and then it began. Thick foam exploded from the filter port, like a desert volcano gone rogue. At first, just the shallow end, a frothy mound climbing over the steps like it had a mind of its own. People clapped. A woman squealed, "Is this a foam party? This is adorable." I stood slowly, folding my chair with deliberate grace, never taking my eyes off the pool. 30 seconds in, The deep end erupted. Waves of white rolled across the surface, burying floaties, capsizing drinks. Foam climbed the deck, slid across chairs, crawled under tables. Kids were laughing, shrieking, treating it like a theme park ride. The adults, not so much, slipping, grabbing railings. One man fell into the cupcake table. Someone else screamed, "My phone!" The speakers crackled, then fizzled. Karen's wireless mic shrieked with feedback and died in her hand. And there she was, struggling through a sea of foam, arms out like a panicked flamingo. Her glittery headpiece now a sudsy helmet sliding over one eye. She shouted something about equipment failure, but no one could hear her. Over the chaos, over the laughter, over the bubbles swallowing her empire whole, people slipped, fell. A teenager skidded into a tiki torch and shouted, "Dude, this is nuts!" Another tried rinsing off at the garden hose, but I'd turned that off an hour ago. Karen finally reached the edge, drenched, wild-eyed, dripping like a drowned prom queen. She locked eyes with me, mouth open, chest heaving. "What did you do?" I gave her the tight-lipped smile she loved to wear at HOA meetings. Just embracing the community spirit. Part 6. The accusation, the footage, and the fall. Karen was shaking, foam clinging to her like a haunted snowman, glitter streaming down her face like sad confetti. "You sabotaged your own pool," she barked, voice cracking from rage, or maybe fear. "You endangered the community. This is a clear violation of HOA safety regulations." I almost choked on my soda. I let out a quiet chuckle. Slow. Deliberate. "Karen, I don't think you understand what you've walked into." She blinked, still panting, still dripping soap. She looked around, maybe searching for backup, anyone who still believed in her imaginary authority. But most of the party? Already gone. Gone with wet shoes, soggy clothes, and mouths full of questions. A few lingered, standing still, watching. Phones out, recording. For once. The clipboard queen didn't hold the room. I stepped closer, voice low enough for her ears only. "You trespassed, hosted an event on private property without permission. You sent out flyers using my address. You entered my pool." That's not true," she sputtered. "We had a vote. The HOA approved it." "Who? You and your mirror?" She flinched. I pulled out my phone. Again. This time I didn't open the app. I opened the footage. The cameras I installed earlier that week. One aimed at the backyard, the other at the side gate, and both had been recording. Everything. There she was, on screen, waving in the party rental team, unlocking the gate, carrying boxes, giving orders, like it was her property. I tapped play again, just loud enough for the nearby neighbors to hear. She lunged for my phone. I pulled it back fast. "Touch me," I said coldly, "and I'll add assault to the list." She froze, arm still half outstretched, soap dripping from her fingertips like guilt. Her voice dropped, almost a whisper. "This is all going to be cleaned up. You can't just ruin everything and think there won't be consequences." I smiled, not kindly. "You're absolutely right." I pointed toward the gate. "There will be consequences, just not for me." I walked over, opened the gate wide. The few remaining guests filed out, awkward, quiet, some nodding, some too embarrassed to meet my eyes. Karen stood alone in the sea of foam, the queen of nothing. Her face twisted, not just with rage, but confusion, like she was still trying to figure out how this had all slipped through her fingers. Part 7. The evidence, the emails, and the HOA uprising. I didn't clean up that night, didn't touch the soggy lays tangled in the grass, didn't sweep the cupcake carnage from the deck, didn't rescue the plastic flamingo slowly sinking in the foam. I left it all, because I wanted her to see it in the morning, a battlefield of glitter and bubbles, the ruins of a dictatorship. That night, I uploaded the footage, 3 clips, trimmed, time-stamped, backed up to 3 separate cloud drives. Then, I drafted 3 messages. The first, to the county property office, filed under unauthorized use of private land. Attached, footage, parcel maps, and a signed complaint. The second, to the entire HOA mailing list. Karen had once sent a neighborhood newsletter, and, lucky me, she had exposed all recipients in the CC field. I hit Reply All. Subject, what you didn't see at the luau. Attached, 3 short video clips. A brief message followed. Dear neighbors, please be aware. The pool used for last night's event is not HOA property. It was accessed without permission. What happened wasn't community spirit. It was trespassing. The actual homeowner. The third copy? I handed it physically to Sylvia, a retired attorney, a quiet woman who'd once been fined by Karen for using off-white curtains instead of regulation white. She looked at the USB I gave her, then looked at me. Am I finally allowed to speak freely at the next meeting? She asked with a smirk. I nodded. Oh, yes. And bring popcorn. 2 days passed. No flyers, no emails, no chirpy reminders about garbage bin violations or front hedge measurements. The HOA Facebook group? Silent. Even the usual Sunday morning, please remember to rake your leaves post was missing. Karen had vanished. But the best part hadn't even happened yet, because that Thursday night was the next HOA meeting. And for the first time in years, it wasn't going to be a meeting. It was going to be a reckoning. Part 8. The meeting, the mic, and the moment the room. Turned Thursday evening. The community center. Usually empty. 10 folding chairs, a pot of lukewarm coffee, and Karen holding court like some HOA monarch. But this time, every seat was taken. Neighbors lined the back wall, some whispering, others waiting with arms crossed and eyes narrowed. And right in the center of the front row, me. I arrived early, not to gloat, but to watch her squirm. Sylvia sat beside me, calm, prepared. She had copies of the deed, the parcel ID, the zoning chart, each highlighted, tabbed, and weaponized. She looked like she was about to cross-examine a witness in court. Karen walked in 2 minutes late, unusual for her. She wore a crisp white blouse, stiff posture, and oversized sunglasses. Indoors. Her mask of confidence was cracked. She stepped to the podium like it was the gallows, cleared her throat, opened a manila folder with trembling fingers. Before we begin tonight's agenda, she said, I'd like to address a few concerns that have recently surfaced. Someone in the back let out a cough. Another chuckled. Karen's eye twitched. There seems to have been some confusion regarding shared space use, she continued, particularly during the recent HOA luau. She waited, hoping for silence, but instead, a voice from the back cut through the tension. Confusion? That was a break-in. Karen straightened her papers. The pool in question has been used for HOA functions before. There were no formal objections filed at the time. We operated under the assumption that— You mean the assumption you owned it? Sylvia asked, standing slowly. She held up a single page. This document shows the pool is part of a separate parcel, not governed by the HOA. Karen blinked. The parcel predates the HOA's founding, Sylvia continued, voice calm, but sharp as glass. Meaning the bylaws don't apply. meaning you had no right. Karen opened her mouth, but no sound came out. And not only did you trespass, Sylvia added, but you distributed flyers suggesting homeowner consent, coordinated vendors, and allowed open access to a private residence. That's not just unethical, it's fraud. The room went silent. All eyes locked on Karen. She looked smaller now, hunched, defensive. She stammered. The board? I had approval. From whom? Sylvia pressed. Your clipboard? A younger woman stood up from the corner. I only moved in 6 months ago, she said. I thought the pool was community property. I never would have gone. If I knew. More voices chimed in. She told us it was donated for the day. She said it was her idea. My wife slipped on that deck. She still smells like bubble bath. Karen threw up her hands. Let's remember the spirit of the event was about unity. But it was too late. Her tone, once commanding, was now desperate. The room was turning. No more nodding. No more forced silence. People were angry, awake, and done. Part 9. The vote, the fall, and the final goodbye. Karen was floundering, words failing, voice cracking, her control. The thing she clung to like a life raft, slipping from her grip, one raised eyebrow at a time. This isn't how we handle things, she pleaded. There are procedures, protocols. But no one was listening. The clipboard had lost its magic. The room didn't fear her anymore. Someone from the back shouted, I motion to suspend her. Another echoed, seconded. Sylvia turned, eyes bright with quiet fire. I propose a vote of suspension on the... Effective immediately, she declared, for abuse of authority, trespassing, and misrepresentation of HOA jurisdiction. The crowd roared, some clapping, some whistling. Karen tried again, arms shaking, voix basse. You can't just vote me out. There's due process. I am the president. No, Sylvia said. You were. The vote was taken, hands raised, rows of them. The count wasn't even close. Karen was suspended on the spot, pending full audit of every amendment, every fine, every silent vote she'd ever forced through. Sylvia was appointed interim president, unanimously. Karen? She sat, motionless, like someone had unplugged her from the power grid. Her lips parted slightly, as if still forming excuses, but nothing came out. No agenda, no gavel, no command. For the first time in years, she had no final word. After the meeting, people gathered in the parking lot, like survivors of a long, ridiculous storm. They shared stories, laughed. One guy asked me what kind of soap I used, said his wife wanted to throw a foam party of their own. I just smiled, said it was the kind you buy when you're really done being nice. Later that night, I drove home slowly, windows down, cool air rolling through the silence. As I turned into my driveway, I saw it. One torn paper lantern, still clinging to the tree by my fence. I didn't take it down. It looked like a trophy. Part 10. The moving truck, the look, and the last bubble. 2 weeks passed. The foam was long gone, washed away by thunderstorms and the occasional bored teenager with a garden hose. But the story still lingered. The tiki torches, gone. The plastic leis, wilted. The flamingo float, finally deflated and tossed in someone's trash bin like a soggy monument to bad decisions. Karen's house was quiet now. Too quiet. No clipped hedges, no passive-aggressive sidewalk patrols, no 6 a.m. emails titled Urgent Community Violation. Then, one afternoon, I saw her, out front. No sunglasses, no clipboard, just a woman pulling weeds. Alone. That night, a silver SUV pulled into her driveway, logo on the side, Lucas and Associates Realty. I nearly spit my drink. Because Lucas is my cousin. We hadn't talked in a few months, and with that night, he called. "Hey," he said, clearly amused. "You didn't tell me you lived next to the Bubble Queen." I nearly dropped the phone. "She hired you?" "Had no idea I was your cousin. I just showed up, saw her name, and couldn't stop laughing." "Are you going to tell her?" "Nope. I'm going to sell her house, get my commission, and maybe leave a bottle of bubble bath as a closing gift." A week later, the sign changed. Under contract. The moving trucks arrived 2 days after that. Karen supervised it herself, still barking orders, still trying to cling to the last shreds of power that no one respected anymore. No one helped, no one waved. Just cardboard boxes, dead grass, and a woman slowly realizing she was no longer in control. I was in my backyard when the last box was loaded, reclined on a lounge chair, umbrella up, drink in hand. I'd set the jets to cycle every 15 minutes, not for cleaning, but for closure. She turned. One last time. Our eyes locked, for just a second. And in that second, I saw it. Not rage, not pride, but maybe, just maybe, a flicker of understanding. She didn't wave. She didn't speak. She just got into her car and drove away. Didn't look back. That evening, Sylvia stopped by with a bottle of wine and 2 mismatched glasses. "For the homeowner," she said, "who brought down a regime." We toasted by the pool, jets humming gently behind us, crickets chirping, children laughing a few yards down. Sylvia leaned back and asked, "You think she'll come back?" I smiled. Number. People like Karen don't return to the places that stripped away their illusion. She'll find a new neighborhood, new rules to rewrite, maybe even a new HOA to conquer, but not here. Not again. We raised our glasses. To clean pools, quiet nights, and neighbors who ask before throwing parties. We clinked glasses and let the silence settle. The kind of silence that only comes after the last bubble pops.